a song for ya.
You're listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I will do one episode for each song the band recorded in the studio. However, this is a fan podcast and not band endorsed. It's more of a tribute to their long history, well beyond just the hits, and my way of giving something back to a band that has given so much to me. Let's dig in! Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 5 of Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, and today we're covering the second half of the combination of Exposition and We Can Work It Out, the latter being a cover by the Beatles. From what I read, this was decided on after Paul McCartney expressed some appreciation for Deep Purple's version of Help. So John Lennon wasn't the only one that enjoyed what Purple did on their song. It's always interesting hearing someone else do your music because you can do just a straight copy of what the original artist did. And, you know, if you're like a cover band and doing live stuff for the crowd, that's fine. If you're recording it, don't necessarily see the point of not adding a little personal touch. I mean, when you're a younger musician and you're learning music, it's great to do covers because you're learning to play familiar songs, which teaches you, structure and performance and all of that. But if you're going to record somebody's song, you can do it so that you draw attention to yourself as an artist, and that happened a lot during this era of music. Still happens today, but not really as much. But nowadays, it's just like if you're going to do it, you do something completely different, and Purple was way ahead of the game. But if you think about songs that, like Elvis and several other artists would record, everybody had their own personal way of doing it. Like, here's the structure of the song, go record it your way and make it yours. And then I think we lost that at some point. But Purple, we're going to do a cover song, we're going to do it our own. So they decided to make everything more dramatic. And this is no different. I just went back for the first time in years and listened to the Beatles version of We Can Work It Out. And wow, it is such a straightforward song. They do the tempo change that Purple does, but it's just really straightforward. It's not, it's very popish. I think if they had done it in their later years, it would have been a much different song. But being, something that was, I would say, in the earlier part of the Beatles, maybe before they just got nuts and when they were still performing and stuff, and they were doing a lot more poppy skiffle type songs. This is just very straightforward. No drama, not really even a ton of emotion. It's just like, here's the song. Whereas I think Purple's version has a lot more emotion in it, which Rod Evans is so good at. The arrangement, and I don't know who to give that credit to, but the arrangement is much more interesting. It's more dramatic. It's more dynamic. And personally, I have to say, I like it better. I was actually shocked to realize how simple the Beatles version was. And I could see why Deep Purple said, look, let's do this song, but let's do it our own way. So we're going to get into that now. Now, remember, this song is merged from Exposition. So we're going to hear the last little bit of Exposition as it blends into We Can Work It Out. So right off the bat, almost everything we heard there is not in the Beatles version. It just starts right where the lyrics start. So that whole opening was Purple's. And I like those little flourishes from Richie. It's neat. It's interesting. The version that I saw was live, and John Lennon kept giving the camera some pretty fun looks while Paul was singing the first verse. I don't know, pretty funny, good stuff. But in any case, I mean, you could tell they were having fun playing the song, and that's fine. It's a nice, lighthearted song. But I think that's the thing is, I think it was interesting because they understood emotion musically, but it's like lyrically, some of their songs didn't really match the emotion of what the story was. Or they just decided to be the opposite of it. Like, we're going to sing this sad song like Help, but we're going to do it in this upbeat, fun, happy way. and make it danceable. Does that make sense? To me, I don't know. That's a little bit weird. But then maybe that was more the style of the time. Um, I guess to an extent it was. If I think of a song like A Band of Gold, and I'm not talking Beatles, I'm just talking general pop now. But if I think of a song like A Band of Gold, it is upbeat. It does have a good energy to it, but it's talking about the death of a relationship. So maybe there was something to that at that time. But whatever it was, Purple, right out of the gate, breaking the mold, saying we're gonna carve our own path and not copy anyone else. We're gonna, we need covers because we only have so much time to do this album. But if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it our own way, and it's going to be noticeable. And I think they did a great job with that.
On talking till I can't go on. While you see it your way, run the risk of knowing that our love will soon be gone. We can work it out. We can work it out.
Really nice drama that they're adding here. I love what Pacey's playing. Just those little bits on the ride that add some really cool dynamics, and that's one of the things I was referring to earlier, like that. These little flourishes that Richie's doing. Also, in the intro, we heard a little bit of that. I don't know what the correct term for it is, but the organ had that sort of cutoff like it does on Hush. And that's really cool to hear again. I love the sound of that. And I forgot to mention that I did find in a couple of different reports that Deep Purple was given more time to make this album than they were Shades of Deep Purple. So that allowed them to do a little bit more in the way of songwriting and fleshing ideas out and things instead of having to throw them together to make the album. But I would say, for musicians who mostly didn't know each other that well, throwing Shades of Deep Purple together came out pretty damn good. I mean, yeah, there's always room for improvement and things that they could have done, especially looking at the talent in the band. But I'd say they put together a pretty damn good album considering how quickly they had to do it. And coming out with a gem like their version of Hush, or a song like Mandrake Root, which, to me is, to this day, one of my favorite Deep Purple songs, probably one of the ones I've listened to the most. Like I said, I used to start my day with it every day. So I think that's pretty amazing what talented people can just, quote, throw together, quote.
Think of what you're saying. You can get it wrong and still you think that it's all right. Think of what I'm saying. We can work it out and get it straight or say goodnight. We can work it out. We can work it out. Life is very short and there's no time for fussing and fighting, my friend.
Nick's bass sounds so good on this album, and I love the little things that he adds. He's just not a root note bass player kind of guy. He makes the bass a very interesting instrument to listen to, and that would be a staple of all the bass players that would be in Deep Purple. Well, I guess there was only three, so all three of them were very dynamic bass players, and it just adds something that, I mean, there were other bands that were doing that. That's not a something that's specific to them, but the particular flavors of bass players that we get in this band are very creative and love their stuff. But the backing vocals of Rod, again, this is a great example of how well he sounds harmonizing his voice, and the layers and the effort that they put into it. I mean, obviously there's multiple layers of backup going on. Love when he sings from, that straight, full voice to that more gentle sound and then puts the backups on it. It just works so beautifully. It's almost a little haunting in this version when they do the slow part, where the drums drop out. It's kind of not haunting in a creepy way, but haunting in an emotional way, if you know what I mean. If you don't know what I mean, it's still that way, but it helps if you know what I mean. Very nice, though. Very beautifully done.
I've always thought that it's a crime. So I will ask you once again. How again.
So, the focus obviously is much more on the drama. So, to pull that off, they had to go a little bit slower than what the Beatles did and just make every hit count. Also, I have to go back and listen because I didn't really find the bass on the Beatles version that interesting, though it didn't really stand out to me. And Paul McCartney, his playing usually stands out to me, but thinking back, I don't know when that started because I don't think it was on the earliest version of the Beatles stuff, like when they were first starting out and writing songs like She Loves You, Yeah, 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 and stuff like that. I don't know that the bass was that interesting. I know Paul McCartney would go on to be an incredible bass player, but I think for the early stuff, I think it was pretty straightforward. So I'm going to have to give some credit to Nick for coming up with this performance. And I don't mind that at all.
Try to see it my way. Only time will tell if I am right or I am wrong. While I see it your way, there's a chance that we might fall apart before too long. We can work it out. We can work it out.
So there was a little bit of a feeling of exposition creeping into this half of the song with that rhythm, and it sounded really good. Very powerful, great drumming there, using the floor tom a little bit to build into a little more power into it. But I love the up tempo part of it, and then to go right down into this dramatic piece again. Great arrangement, killer solo from John Lord, of course. Even as young as he was already a pretty seasoned musician, classically trained. So, he knew how to write, he knew how to perform, and shows it on pretty much every piece of music Purple ever did. Well, I can't say that because I think in some of the stuff around Perfect Strangers and that, I think he took more of a back seat to Richie for some of it. But when it was time for him to shine, he shined.
Fussing and fighting, my friend. I have always thought that it's a crime. So I will ask you once again. I'll ask you once again.
I'm so glad I'm doing this podcast because I just noticed something that I've never heard in the song before. While we're doing the slow part in this passage, usually it's just 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and very much on the drums. The 1 is the kick drum with a crash cymbal, and then 2 and the 3 are snare, boom tap tap, boom tap tap. But in this last passage, Ian Pace changed up what he was playing a little bit, made it a little more interesting, and as a young kid, you want to do things that are exciting and fun, and you don't want to just play the same thing over and over again. So instead of just going boom, tap, tap, now he's going ba-boom, tap, tap, ba-boom, tap, tap. And that's really cool. It's kind of quiet, just in the mix, but I never noticed he played that before.
Try to see it my way. Only time will tell if I am right or I am wrong. While I see it your way, there's a chance that we might fall apart before too long. We can work it out. We can work it out. At least we can try. We can try.
You know, it's interesting. Just last night, a clip came up on my social media about the song by the Beatles called The End from Abbey Road. Well, the song's called The End. It's from the album Abbey Road, not The End from Abbey Road. And they were talking about how Ringo really didn't want to show off what he could do as a drummer in the Beatles. And I don't necessarily agree with that because I think there's quite a few times he shined. Just his swing rhythms were something that really showed off what he could do and was very unique for him. But I think there were plenty of songs where he showed off as a drummer. There's some really interesting drum beats. He didn't just play everything in 3/4 or 4/4 time. So I think he did show off now and then. But they were talking about this song because it's, there's a drum solo in it, and the song kind of features a little bit of everybody's talent as the final farewell from the Beatles. And I thought that was pretty cool. And then I'm like, yeah, that's true. That's really the only time that he did a drum solo. And of course, there's been controversy over whether he really did it or Paul McCartney actually did it. But either way, it's like, who puts a drum solo in a Beatles song? Well, Ian Pace. Why not? It's a great ending. It just kind of feels like they've all had fun, and now they just want to get a little bit of fun in before it's time to go home. And I love the feel of the end of this. I think the stuff that Richie's playing, those little flourishes are great. Nikki and John holding up the thick and fullness of the song. And then, Ian Pace doing his solo, Rod kind of going off a little bit vocally. It's just a lot of fun. And again, not something that was part of the original structure. So yeah, I think Deep Purple did a great job of making this song their own. It's something that I really enjoy. I've listened to them do this many, many times. And funny, I'm still hearing new things. But again, as I've said, throughout the course of this show, is that I'm doing a different kind of listen. So I'm probably going to hear things that I've just not paid specific attention to before, because as you listen to a song, you tend to, gravitate towards the things that you like every time you hear it, and don't typically go out of your way to go, all right, you know what, I want to see what else is in this song. I want to dig into it a little bit deeper and find out, maybe there's some things in there I haven't heard before. Like, you just don't typically do that. So that's kind of what's fun about these critical listens, is the opportunity to give yourself the permission, I guess, to dig a little bit deeper and see what you see or hear what you hear in a song. And I'm glad I did, because that little change for me in pace was something that makes the song more interesting to me. And now I'm going to hear it every time I hear it. So there you go, guys. Another show in the books. Hope you enjoyed it. Please remember to share, let people know about the show if you know some people that are Deep Purple fans or may be Deep Purple fans, if they get exposed to their music. And when I say that, I mean beyond the deep tracks. Like, so many people know the hits like Highway Star and Smoke in the Water, and they're great songs, but there's so much more that the band did that people might find enjoyable if they were given a reason to connect with it. And I say a reason because if you're, like a listener of radio, or you go by like Spotify playlists, most of the time you're just going to see those same songs over and over. Whereas all these albums, all these songs, just what we've already seen already in a season and a half, there's so many great things out there. So, yeah, good stuff. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Have a good one. Cheers. Thanks for listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast, a tour of the entire Deep Purple studio recordings. Please remember to give the show a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Leave a comment and tell your friends. I also have a Patreon set up if you'd like to support the show. You can also write to me at smokeonthepodcast@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and thanks for listening.